Good afternoon. My name is Gary Dickelman. I'm going to introduce the speakers for this session. Crystal Luce, and is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
And also Rose.
Jaggy Alamanian.
Perfect. Right. Um, Crystal is assistant professor of early and middle grades education at Westchester University in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, close to my old stomping grounds. And Rose is a professor of education at Westchester University. Recent presentations include Pennsylvania Association of College of Teachers Education and a lot of other things. And same for Crystal. And because we have a relatively short time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but the talk looks really interesting to me. It's been argued that we have moved into an age of personalization. One can see while ordering drinks at a local Starbucks where options are limitless. The personalization has been called the fifth industrial revolution, a time noted for deep multi-level cooperation between people and machines. With emphasis on innovation, purpose, and inclusivity, this revolution calls for change in the classroom setting in order to focus on relationships between human needs and lived experiences. So I will let you take it from there to on to the conclusions.
Okay.
So
Thank you. All right.
Okay, hopefully that comes into play. Thank you for coming and being a part of our presentation today. I am Crystal Luce, as we heard from Westchester, and we do a lot of work with pre-service teachers going out into the field in current day K-12 education. I also teach a lot of leadership courses with my colleague who is not here today, and we stumbled upon the fifth industrial revolution and became fascinated by it because it connects to personalized learning, which I do a lot of instruction on with my pre-service teachers, but it also connects to leadership and the courses that we teach in those areas. So we've discovered this and decided it'd be a great presentation to bring here. And Rose, you want to talk about what you teach?
Yes. So I am also a teacher educator at Westchester University and teach courses in the undergraduate and graduate programs, and also supervise student teachers. You want to go to the next one? I can't see it.
Oh, so you did that.
I don't know. How do we scroll?
Sorry, we're Apple
Yes.
people.
Yeah, I have the same trouble.
There we go. Oh wait, that's video.
I know. So as she's pulling that up, so today the fifth industrial revolution will make connections to personalization. And to start off, I want you to think about everything that is personalized today. Cosmetic companies will send you things to take a survey. They use AI to personalize the cosmetics that are delivered to your home. So it's depending upon what environment and what part of the nation you live in, your cosmetic is supposed to look differently. Starbucks, when you enter that realm, you can have them modify any drink that you want. When you're shopping on Amazon, this also becomes a personalized experience. As we were talking about earlier, as you said, if you're looking at a shovel, later on you'll get 7 different shovels sent to you. If you're on Instagram and browsing on there, same thing happens. So everything we do is personalized in a sense. So we wanted to think about this and how we could bring it into the classroom setting, because we know there's personalization in K-12. So we'll start right off the bat, getting you to think about a forecast for 2025.
Yes. So we are teacher educators. So everything that we do. How many of you are in higher education? Okay. K-12, different field. Okay. As teacher educators, we are always trying to embed best practices in what we do in the classroom. So in order to do that today, we are embedding technology all throughout our presentation. So, and also to allow our online friends to join us as well. So I'm going to hand out a handout that has all the QR codes, but if you're familiar with QR codes, you can use your phone or an iPad to take a picture of it, and it will take you to a specific site. So let me hand these out. The first thing we want you to think about is what you think are the top skills of 2025. So what do your students need to be able to do? What is important in jobs of the future. And just add your ideas there. You'll see when you come to the Padlet, there is a plus sign, and I'll pull it up in a minute. If you click on that plus sign, you should be able to add your idea for what you think are the top skills. You can think general, you can think discipline specific, and as I said, you can think about jobs. What do our students need when they leave us?
And it doesn't matter what field you're in.
Yes.
So whatever industry you're in, what are the top skills you think they need to leave the university with as they're entering the job force? When I think about my own children, I have 4 of them. 2 are in high school right now. 1 is entering college and 1 is in college. And it is really interesting for my college student to hear the skills that he has acquired since attending the university. So consider that as you add your own thoughts. This forecast for 2025 is actually from the World Economic Forum, and we'll give you the answers at the end of the presentation about what they consider to be the forecast for 2025. But we were curious what you thought.
Oh, I thought I hit share. Okay, so we have, why is it not showing here?
Maybe you could just read them.
Yeah, I'll just read it. Hopefully you can see them all as well. Yeah, so willingness to be flexible. What skills should our students leave with? Computer skills. Let me refresh. See if there's any others. Yeah, it's not showing up here. Okay, so we're going to ask you to, people still working here?
Can I just say one?
Yes, absolutely.
Media literacy.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Media literacy, great point. Anybody else want to just share rather than go through the technology?
I put communication skills.
Communication skills, absolutely.
Advocacy and sensitivity around diversity.
Absolutely. Thinking about diversity issues, most certainly. Okay, so tuck these into your brain. And Crystal, at the end of our presentation, throughout our presentation, many of these ideas will come up. And at the end, Crystal's going to share what the World Economic Forum says about skills that our students need for the future. So, okay, there we are. Here we are. Okay, so let's consider how we're educating our students for the 5th Industrial Revolution and beyond. So when considering all of this in general, think about the 1st Industrial Revolution. When you think about education during this time, it was pretty standardized and very impersonal, more like the factory model, which we try to move away from today. In the 2nd Industrial Revolution, things started to change. There was more requirements for formal education that we were seeing as a whole, which could be, good. The 3rd Industrial Revolution, we started to see a lot of digital boom. So that was interesting. You saw more of this happening in the classroom settings. Even programming was part of this. The 4th Industrial Revolution was at the beginning of the 21st century. This is when we started to see blockchain, more intensive coding, robotics, all of this good stuff. Did you just hit that? Okay.
No, it didn't.
Why is it not going?
There you
Okay,
go.
great. So today, as we consider how we can educate students for the 5th Industrial Revolution and beyond, we need to consider the students in our classrooms and what they're bringing with them. Students are practically bred on technology. So when you look at the American Academy of Pediatrics, they'll say at the age of 2, a student can start looking at technology for 1 hour a day. So think about that over a span of a lifetime. Beginning at age 2, if they're doing 1 hour a day, I just can't imagine what is happening to their brains. There definitely has to be some serious hardwiring that is happening so that they are connected to technology. So I have a video, but I don't know if this is going to work. And I'm thinking it's not. So basically this video just shares everything that's happening with machines in factories and not just machines alone, but how we're interacting with machines. So when we first talked about machine in the industry,
we thought about machines doing everything on their own, and it was pretty scary because people thought they were going to lose their jobs. But there is connectivity in the fifth industrial revolution between people and machines. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So when we consider educating students beyond for the fifth industrial revolution, Vox Populi of 2020 does a lot of great explanation about how, yes, computers are fast and they're speedy, but one thing computers lack is the empathy. So we cannot lose that piece when we're thinking about industry and what we're educating students with today. So many of the devices have the impact in the classroom settings because they're fast, but we can't lose the connectivity. And when we're working with students in our classroom settings, we have to make sure there's collaboration, but also that they have the ability to be anonymous if they so desire. So that's why we're doing a lot of interactive things with you to show you ways that they can connect and be a part of everything while being anonymous.
And I forgot to say this in the beginning, all of the tools that we're using can be used in person, they can be used synchronously, asynchronously, really easy. They're not so easy today to use, but typically they are.
So this is a great chart. My colleague Mike, who is not here today, he had to be with his mother. She's not well. So he is the guru behind this chart and he is not here today. So I wanted to give him credit. So when this is a nice chart to show the span and education from the first to the fifth industrial revolution and what happened during these times, and it brings us to the fifth industrial revolution, which I love because we're talking about the multi-level cooperation between people and machines. So it's nothing to fear, except maybe more to embrace, because we can look at how we are cooperating and how we connect and interact and support each other. So there has to be a lot of logical thinking and creativity for this fifth industrial revolution to work. And you'll see those words when we look at the 2025 forecast from the World Economic Forum. Oh.
Get to that one.
Oh, goodness. It's a little jumpy. So when thinking about the fifth industrial revolution, these are some bullet points to consider. The need to be able to focus technology uses for the good of people. How can we support that? Increase focus on relationships, needs, and those lived experiences. There has to be some type of personal connection today. When you look at all of the generations as a whole, personal connection is a selling point. I think the keynote speaker initially today did a lot of storytelling, and that is powerful because that connects us. And that is part of what the fifth industrial revolution says. We have to look at people and their lived experiences as well. It can't just be computer-based. Creativity, being able to creatively find solutions is part of what we should be doing in our classroom settings. Linking narratives to authentic experiences, and also considering ethical decisions and what we're doing in that arena. And one of you touched upon that, I think it was Matt, right? And so based on human needs. So as a whole, what I want you to consider is what role you play in the learning in your classrooms. So here are some ideas. Identify how and why you're using technology in your classrooms. What are you doing with technology? And is there some type of creative element and connectivity to your students? Are they taking time to examine and learn more in general about, or actually are we thinking about effective distance learning practices? And so a lot of us are teaching on Zoom these days. How can we make it collaborative and add that connectivity? So it's really important. Consider project-based approaches. I know I have been doing so many more project-based approaches in my classroom settings because I want to make it realistic and authentic for my students. And then finally, what role do you play? Are you leading everything? Are you facilitating students as they grapple with challenges? Are you enabling them to do self-directed learning, which is huge with technology and meeting needs, it's a great time with the fifth industrial revolution to inspire this type of learning. Are you fostering and supporting an environment that supports creative thinking and then the problem solving? So all so important.
Should we skip it and just
We
go?
can.
Yeah.
Just talk about
So
it.
again, we were going to have you use technology, and you're welcome to take a shot of it and see what's there. But I'll just ask you the questions, and I'm actually going to go back to the previous slide. The first question is to personalize this for you and to think about the fifth industrial revolution and what Crystal shared. I guess I should be standing here.
I forgot what.
I know, and what you do in your practice. Are you leading a lot of learning? Are you facilitating, or both? So raise your hand if you would say you're doing a lot of the leading in your practice. What about facilitating? Okay, and what about both? Okay, and how do you make those decisions about whether you're leading or facilitating? What figures into those decisions that you make? Does anybody want to share? Yes.
Well, I'm in corporate education and
Yes.
all of that, but the thing is, students, what you don't want to be doing, if I understand the first thing you said,
Mm-hmm.
is being too directive
Mhm.
and top down and all
Mhm.
of that stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, it's really about being more. Everybody has different style and stuff, but you need the skill is to facilitate it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I was asked a question in a job interview once because I have math degrees, but they're from years ago. Are you still comfortable teaching math? And I thought about that, and I said, no, I'm not. But I'm an expert at facilitating learning.
Mm-hmm.
They're two different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to share?
Just in general, I wanted to throw out there that Christina and I both are instructional designers, so when we talk about the role we play in the learning process of students, we're collaborating with faculty
Yes.
and asking them the questions kind of like you're asking, you know, so maybe even getting them to facilitate more than just read or break out of the typical, I don't know, yeah, like the lecture,
Yep.
you know, watch a video, answer a question.
Yes.
So trying to slowly get them to branch out to some newer, better ideas.
Yes. Go ahead.
I also think though it's the type of student, like I teach
Yes.
a 100 level class.
Yes.
And so it's daunting to go in there and say, all right, you don't know anything about this topic, but explore.
Right,
You know?
exactly.
There is
Yeah.
some reading that needs to take place.
Yeah, and so one of the other questions that we were going to ask is what challenges do you face, or what are some of the things that factor into your decision making, and where the students are in their learning journey, in their program. I teach a first year experience class, first semester undergrads. There's a lot more of me leading and then moving into facilitating with that group than it is when I'm supervising my student teachers or teaching a graduate class, where they are bringing so much prior knowledge, so many experiences. They have real purposes for what is happening in the classroom. Yes.
I think too, I'm also a designer, and so I rely on whoever I'm designing for, but it's also asking the question of, you know, what format is the content going to be in that is consumed, whether it's self-paced completely or, you know, hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely needs our decision.
Yeah, and what you'll hear us talk about, kind of a common thread all throughout this, is that intentionality. Really thinking about and I know instructional designers, you're always telling us that, like everything needs to be intentional, and we're asking you to kind of take ideas related to the fifth industrial revolution and the other topics we'll address with personalized learning, self-directed learning, top skills for 2025 in making these decisions. Are there any other challenges that you face? One of the things, yes.
Actually, I'm teaching adult learners. They are new immigrants, and they have substantial career already.
Yes.
So when I teach them grammars, such as the clauses, and I let them to explore the pattern from multiple examples. But at the end, they ask me, why didn't you just give us a grammar class?
Yes.
So I think it's different when teaching adult learners and
Yes.
younger learners.
Yes.
It's really challenging because I don't want to give them just grammar charts because I know if I give them grammar charts, they won't remember it.
Right.
So
Learn by doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions related to that? Okay, so now we're going to talk, Crystal's going to talk a little bit more about personalized learning, and then we'll get into adult learning theory in a few minutes as well. Oh, no, you're fine. So really interesting, before I change the slide, our learning facilitators who help us design our courses at Westchester, they encourage us to use many different engagement activities with the students, so many different platforms to get them involved in it. So Mentimeter and Padlet are a hit usually with students. So that's what we've exposed you to so far that our students enjoyed. We tried to pick out some things our students enjoyed. Have any of you used Mentimeter? Okay. It's fantastic. It is a hit at all levels with my students. And I've really started using it. I use it a lot in person or when I was teaching synchronously. But I've been doing a lot asynchronously with it as well, because you can embed videos and the students really, really like it. Yeah, they love it. So we looked at the current state of education in one of my courses, and this was with pre-service teachers. But in general, we examine classroom environments, and what this caused us to do is, as a whole with my colleagues, we looked at our learning environments. We went to an excellent session earlier today, it seems like forever ago, on personalized learning environments, and that really struck me because I study personalized learning, and environments are key. So I kind of married the two, and we did a lot of discussion about classroom environments and what they look like today, because there's a lot of diversity, a lot of backgrounds that we have to better understand, and all of that goes into course design. Even corporate training, you have to consider the dynamics of the room that you're in, because there's so many things you need to consider culturally when training people in your environment. So I know my husband's in the corporate world, and he talks to me about his training sessions, but they don't do anything with being anonymous. So they'll do a lot of role playing in front of the whole corporate team. And I think, wow, that is pretty intense. We don't do as much of that in the role of education in our department, but in the corporate field, in the business field, there's a lot of role playing so that they're hitting their selling point. So I thought that was really interesting when comparing the two. So we did a lot of discussion on personalization. And when I consider a definition for personalization and what we were doing, we were examining students within our classroom environment and their backgrounds, their cultures, their academic interests and needs. So it's really important to read the room and consider what are the needs of your participants. I know it's hard when you're doing that online, so I like to do a survey before my course starts. And then I always have them use something called Flipgrid, where they introduce themselves. And I think that's powerful because I see their face and I do one so they see my face and they can kind of connect to me even though it's online. So during this process with my students, we did an action research project. So I wanted them to learn about personalized learning, but I thought you can't learn about personalized learning if I'm just teaching you. I wanted this to be self-directed. I wanted them to figure out what they wanted to know about personalized learning, and I wanted them to dig deep and gather the research. So they came up with these areas: assessment, classroom culture, equity, instructional rigor, and student agency. And from that, even though they were going out into the field as teachers and investigating this, it changed our classroom environment and what we were doing because of the research that they were conducting. So when considering assessment, they wanted it beyond standardized assessments. They wanted to examine what was happening in school settings that was more authentic and project-based. And because of that, our classroom became more project-based because it's what they enjoyed. Classroom culture. What is the makeup of the classroom? So they examined classrooms out in the field. What are the different cultural makeups? And then we discussed what that would look like. Equity was based on background knowledge, and they investigated what all the different backgrounds, instructional levels of the students in the fields that they were in. Instructional rigor, that was based on
academic instruction, but not just personalized learning platforms. So like Khan Academy or something like that, where it's adapting to what you know, but a little more instructional heavy on using technology, but using technology in a friendly way so that it was engaging and collaborative. So that was what they were looking at in the field, and it's what we did in our classroom. And then student agency, this really flipped on a dime here, because this is student driven. And what are they doing? They looked at what students were doing in the classroom that was student driven and self-directed, and how much of that was happening. But in turn, they formed relationships with their mentors. So if you're familiar with situated learning theory, which is an adult learning theory, it's all about the mentorship and guiding others while you're learning. And that's what happened. The relationships between the mentor and the student in the field were so much better and real, because they were bringing more to the table. So based on that, my students journaled. So I wanted them to do some kind of reflecting on journals. And I did this during COVID and then also face-to-face. So this was a 2-year study. And during COVID, it was a digital journal. So I continued that with my face-to-face people. So it wasn't them handwriting, but they did it digitally, and it was really interesting. And so some of the things they saw in classroom settings, there is a lack of personalized learning because everything is standardized. Student agency, mentor, teacher, and comfort levels. Overall, because students were taking control of their learning through action research, they felt more comfortable with what they were learning because they were in charge. So that was really exciting to see. And then cultural representation. Currently, in classroom settings, they found that there is a lack of racial, ethnic, and cultural representations on projects. So that was really interesting, and I'm glad that they had that takeaway. Survey data showed a bunch of different things. Technology was heavy during COVID, but what they found that it was personalized because it was more collaborative. So there were a lot of collaborative activities using technology to engage students, and then that carried over this year to the face-to-face settings. So that was really comforting to know. And then also something more authentic assessments. A lot of the school districts in Pennsylvania got rid of standardized assessments, like the state testing and some things like that, and we celebrated it because sometimes it's not needed. I know we have to track data, but it was really nice because things became more authentic and student-driven. And of course, the flexibility came along with it. So all this to say, adult learning theory was really spearheading all that we were doing, because we were living situated learning theory because we were learning in context. So we were learning right in our classroom setting as they engaged in action research. They were self-directed because they were leading it. And then finally, they were doing the research both in the field and through their literature reviews. So I felt that they were becoming the experts, and they were also educating me. So I love that as an instructor because it felt so nice to have that conversation with them. Optimal learning is rooted in the situation when a person participates with support and guidance. No matter what you're doing, if you're training, if you're designing, it has to be rooted in participation, so involving the participants. And so when considering technological tools, the biggest takeaway is there has to be opportunities for individual reflection and collaborative thinking. Even though technology is personalized to what our needs are, we also have to step outside that box and do some collaboration, which we'll hear more about going forward.
Any questions, comments so far?
Okay, right?
Yeah?
Go.
Okay.
This is dot storming. I love this.
So again, you can pull it up so that you can see it, but we'll talk through it. How many of you are familiar with dot storming? This is one I haven't used as much, but I like it. So what you do here is I added some cards, they're called, for ideas. And if you see the stars, you would click on a star to show that applies to you. So it's very social media like, I'm liking things, students love it. And then they can also comment. So what I want you to do is think about, and Crystal mentioned this previously, how does personalization, customization fit into your daily life? And I gave some examples here. Do you use Noom? Does anybody here use Noom? How about Netflix? How does Netflix personalize for you? Right? They look at your search history, the things that you've watched. If you're in my family where I have 3 kids and a husband, I'm getting things recommended to me that I'm not really interested in, but it's looking through the data, right? DoorDash. I'm not a DoorDasher, but my college-age kids say, oh yeah, Mom, DoorDash will recommend things for you based on what you've ordered. Ticketmaster, literally, as Crystal and I were sitting outside, I got 3 emails from Ticketmaster. You might be interested in this. You might be interested in this. Starbucks, Crystal mentioned, Spotify. So these companies, these tools are always taking data, and they are trying to personalize and customize for us constantly. Our suggestion is, can we connect that with what happens in the classroom by having our students discover their own learning history? So not search history, and I don't mean history in, all the way back, but learning about themselves. And I'm going to tie that with adult learning theory. So self-directed learning is very powerful. When we take initiative, then we learn more, and we apply it authentically. And so that's often what we're searching out for our students, is self-directed learning. And so if we can connect this idea of personalization to self-directed learning and adult learning theory, then our students will have more purpose, they'll be more motivated, they'll be able to apply what they're learning to their own lives, to their profession. And our job is to learn about our students, figure out their learning history, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, and then adapt, structure our environments so that our students are continuing to learn about themselves and moving more towards self-directed learning. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah, and just my wife is an expert in early childhood 0 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrote some papers together on distributed cognition and things like that. But what the takeaway was for me is she talked about the arrangement of an early childhood classroom. You don't, and it's all facilitation, and it's all classroom arrangement, right? You put the dramatic play area near this, and you don't teach, you redirect, right? And they go from one thing to the other safely, and they learn and so forth. And this was like, oh my God, that's the way we should do interface design. That's the way we should design our adult learning, the environment. We don't think about that as much as put the burden on them, right?
Yes.
But,
or we're going to give it all to you, right? You're going to passively sit there and we're going to share all of this, and you're going to be interested, and you're going to learn it, and you're going to apply it, and then you're going to teach it to somebody else. Yeah, that's very.
Yeah, we used to say there's so much to cover that we have to go through all of this. And I used to ask, like, what are you uncovering?
That's a great question. I love that. What are you uncovering? So that, yes, I'm sorry.
So if you're adapting to all of your students, right? I mean, is there an optimal size of a classroom? I mean, I think it gets overwhelming when you're doing 32 to 60 students, and then you have to negotiate with all of them times 8 or however many classes you have. But
so are you talking about in higher ed, college age students? Yeah, so that's really, really tricky. And so I think we can't realistically expect ourselves to learn all of this information about every student, but we can structure environments and activities and things that are happening in our classroom so they begin to learn these things about themselves, right? And so here are the things that I would suggest, and what adult learning theory tells us students should be learning about themselves. So their sense of why, their need to know. What's the purpose behind what we're doing, what I'm trying to learn? What are my short-term goals? What are my long-term goals? How do they connect? How do I feel about myself? My self-concept as a learner. Do I like to learn more independently, autonomously? Do I like to collaborate? And we had a question from one of our online participants. Can self-directed learning and collaboration connect? Most certainly. If I am directing my learning and I figure out, wow, I learn really well collaborating with others. I like presenting with other people because that's where learning really takes place for me. Then that's part of this journey of figuring out our history, for our students figuring out their history. Yes, go ahead.
And by topic. So if
Yes.
you do that dot storming activity,
Yes.
and they discover they have shared interests, then they can collaborate with each other,
Yep.
and then they can self-direct learning. as a
Absolutely,
team.
absolutely. What's their prior experience, and not just what do I know, but how can I tap into that to help me continue to learn more? What's their readiness to learn? What do they know about the content? How useful is it for them? And then, as Crystal said, exploring areas of interest. Their orientation to learning. So trying to figure out how does this apply to their lives? That's a little harder when students are in the very beginning stages of their process. So with my undergraduate education majors, that's a lot more, as I mentioned earlier, of me facilitating that. And I'll share an example in a minute. And then as they go through their program and they're in the field, and then maybe they are graduate students, now they can apply it. And then the last thing, their motivation. What motivates them internally as a learner? And can they connect that to their career? Can they connect that to their family potentially? Because that's going to improve quality of life. It's going to foster positive self-esteem. So what this might look like, as I mentioned, I teach first year classes and then I supervise student teachers. So very different places in their understanding of who they are as learners. With my first year experience course, we do something called a challenge-based learning project. And there is a lot of structure there where we are helping our students. I co-teach it with other people, which is why I'm going to say we. We help them figure out through this challenge-based learning project some of these things. What are they interested in? So they find a problem, a challenge in the field of education or social work, which are their areas that they're interested in. And they research about that. What does it look like in the field? What's going on out in schools or in the field of social work? And they come up with a solution. We structure activities in the classroom that help them tap into some of these things. They're not getting to all of it. They're not getting to that real life application. They're beginning to think about it, but they're not actually doing it. With my student teachers, they engage in an inquiry project, which is basically action research at an undergraduate level, where they are tapping into all of these things, figuring out what is a wondering, what is something I need to learn more about in my classroom. Why do I want to know about that? What does the research show me? How can it impact my performance in the classroom? And they spend a whole year performing research in their classroom. They really hit that real life application. It's motivating because they're doing it on a daily basis. They're working with these students. So our idea for you is trying to help our students really tap into learning about themselves and these particular things to become more self-directed learners.
Oh, there it is.
Whoops, I didn't want to hit that. I didn't even touch that and it came up. Okay, so you ready for me to go? Okay, yeah, go. No, you talk about it. So in the very beginning, you talked about, we asked you to, on the Padlet, add your top 10 skills of 2025. Crystal's going to talk about
Yeah,
them.
you could too. And this is from the World Economic Forum, and recently. And so this talks about all the skills that we want to see in our learners. And I'll just give you a minute to read over them. We're good. So in this forum, they wanted to address trainers, so goals for training workshops and also students today. So in any training workshop, there should be application of these things. So creativity, if I'm going from the bottom up, creativity, some type of technology design, emotional intelligence, reasoning and problem solving, and I love how empathy maps is mentioned, because even though we're in the 5th industrial revolution with all this technology, there still has to be empathy, reasoning and problem solving. So making and creating, leadership and social influence in a group setting. So both really, really crucial. Leadership is a big skill, and I feel sometimes it doesn't get fostered enough in 9 through 12 when students should really harness it. So important to consider anytime we can foster leadership. Resilience and flexibility. So using these strategies to work on tasks, and just teaching flexibility in general, even as an instructor, that we have to be flexible. Critical thinking has been around for a while, just encouraging the use of analysis and problem solving. So I thought this was particularly interesting.
Definitely some of these came up. I'm sure you've thought of these and added them to the Padlet. Okay, so to summarize, if you take the ideas that we shared related to 5th Industrial Revolution, adult learning and adult learning theory, top skills for 2025, personalized learning, here are some themes: collaboration, personalization, building in opportunities for creativity and innovation in our students, in our learning environments, teaching and learning with purpose and building engagement. And we often think of technology as an engagement tool, which it is, but it also needs to be intentional, right? I often go in to see a student teacher and they're trying to observe a student teacher. They're trying to wow me with their use of technology. And I'll say, that was great, or that was interesting. I don't say great, that was interesting. Tell me, what was your thinking behind that? Well, and it really was, they just wanted to wow me. And I'm like, well, you spent 20 minutes on that, and that really could have been a whiteboard activity. So let's think about what were your purposes here. So making sure no matter what our tools are, we're doing them with purpose, and that they're engaging, but they're engaging in the right ways. And then thinking about inclusivity and consciousness, using all of these ideas to help our students be more inclusive. All right, so then the last thing we were going to do, which we won't, we'll just talk about it, is a Jamboard. I'm sure you're familiar with Jamboard. This is an oldie but goodie as well. And in an effort to practice what we preach about personalization and applying and having you be self-directed learners, what did you learn in this presentation that you, or what is something that you were already thinking about that maybe you now know a little bit more about? What are your takeaways? What will you take from today into your practice so that you can foster a learning environment that is preparing our students for the 5th Industrial Revolution, beyond? This is a big time in education for thinking about changes, right? Technology is so much a part of our world, obviously. We're all rethinking teaching and learning as a result of COVID. So what, does anybody want to share a takeaway, something that they're thinking? Maybe you don't have it figured out, but you want to take it back and spend some more time reflecting on it?
Well, yeah, in the 5th Industrial Revolution attributes that you have there,
Yeah.
I'm looking at a lot of them. I mean, they're incredibly important, but that's happening, for example, in against a backdrop of political
Yes.
that says, diversity is bad, that, a lot of these things are just over the airwaves and so forth. And that's the way that technology is actually working against all of these things here. How do we break that, break through that?
You can figure that out. You will be the keynote at every conference from now on, right? Yes, yes, absolutely. We are grappling with a lot.
And with that idea about, like you said, with what's on the airwaves and about diversity and this and that, and connecting that to the idea of personalization, with taking the technology that basically gives us recommendations,
Yes.
and then applying that in education. One of the problems with doing that personalization, I feel like we get like the Facebook and the Twitter problem, where you're constantly fed only what you want to hear. So if it got brought into an educational environment, can we do it to capitalize on the good stuff, but also possibly, incorporate, maybe I'm gonna bring up or recommend, hey, this might be the opposite of what you think. Like, could we encourage perspective, open-minded thinking, et cetera, by capitalizing on the recommendations, but trying not to have, the weakness or the fallout that we see from that being used in social media.
Great. Love that.
So, yeah, we had a question here I should probably address. Maybe you want to. Based on the slide previous, it said, but aren't these skills only important when real world skills are the basis? For example, if you need an engineer, she must know engineering before these skills come into play. So that would have been on the previous slide. Yeah, those skills. So yes, I think, yeah, you have to learn, if you're training to be a medical professional or an engineer, you have to get the foundation down. This one. Oh, 2025.
This chart,
Yes.
that's what he means. Okay.
Yeah. Again,
So-
same thing.
Yeah, and I think, yes, real world application, but we all know that the more we can attach what we do in classrooms or whatever learning environment to the real world, the better learning that takes place. So maybe it's not the students actually doing it, but showing examples of what it looks like. Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's not, I don't think the employers are really concerned that the student doesn't have functional knowledge. It's they don't have these skills.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they may be a brilliant engineer, but they can't, they don't have leadership skills.
Yes. Yeah, I was just having a conversation with one of my children recently about majors in college, and I said, listen, the major is just, a way to get the skills that you need, the communication skills, the critical thinking skills, the analytical skills, right? All of those things. Yes, you want to also know the specifics, but these things are the basis of all that we do, no matter what your profession is. So I guess it's meshing the two. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? I think we're at our time. Yes.
We got 5 minutes for questions.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay,
So we're in our question time.
No, that was the end of the timing. There's such two things that I think are the headwinds for all of this. Is that the anti-science, say to anybody who you want to argue with today, well, there's a study here and I can quote it and it comes out of Harvard and one I don't believe any studies,
Yes.
well, anti-vaxxing and all of that stuff that's going on today. And the political climate is, I went to Florida recently and, how the politics are infiltrating the education system and the problems that I can pick 7 of these things to say, those are now huge challenges for the teachers that are in those classrooms.
Absolutely. And making people not want to enter the field also.
Well, yeah.
Because we know this is important, but we're getting so much pushback in being able to do that with our students. And so, do I really want to enter this field is a question that a lot of people are asking. Yeah, it's sad because I think we're missing out on a lot of really good future educators. Yeah. Well, so our last thing is hopefully you've found something today that will lead to a learning revolution, maybe not a revolution, but a change of sorts in your own practice, and share with those that you guide in their journey as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There we go. Oh, they showed up funny here.